Well, I frequently get questions and comments about crops growing here in Hawaii. The ones that sort of challenge me, and the reason I'm here right now, is the idea of attempting to grow temperate climate crops in a tropical island. That's kind of what I'm here for today. But before we go on to the perennial crops, which are the ones most affected by Hawaiian conditions, let's discuss the annuals first. Okay, because annuals, most of our common flower bed critters and almost every vegetable that we eat, whether than artichokes, and a few other things out there, they're all annuals. Now, defining an annual, most of you know what that means, but it's just any plant that will finish its complete cycle from seed and back to seed again within a period of 12 months is an annual. If it takes a little longer than that, well, we call it a biennial. If it goes on, so it's 3 years and more, well, that's called a perennial. Okay. No, long-lived and short-lived perennials. There's 3-year perennials and there's 3,000-year perennials. Anyway, so starting with the annuals, which is most of the vegetables, which is, folks coming here and wanting to plant crops to support themselves in Hawaii. These are really, really important plants. You can plant a coconut tree if you want to, or you put in an avocado, and this is all great stuff. Highly recommend it, but you're going to wait a while. Yeah, you'll be waiting a while. And so that to begin with, that's one reason annuals are so important to us. We have them now, all right? Matter of months in some cases is all to get annuals. They also tend to be the largest portion of the food crops that most of us eat, both in the vegetable world and in the world of grains, carbohydrates, cereals, beans, and so on. Rice is an annual, pinto beans are an annual, potatoes are an annual, on and on, right? So they're very, very important. Here in Hawaii, most of the annuals that you would know in New York or Minnesota or Arizona, we can grow most of them. Yep, most of them grow here. A few actually thrive. Okay, yeah, there are a few that really go to town. There are others that struggle, but they're possible. And there are a few that I would have to say are almost impossible. I never say never, because just because I failed 20 different times trying to grow that stuff doesn't mean that somebody else won't figure it out. And so challenge me on this if you know what you're doing, and if I tell you, growing garlic here is not feasible, you let me know how you're doing it if you can actually manage to get a decent sized bulb like the ones I have to import from California. Yeah. So, running down a quick list, the right varieties here are very important. I did a video a while back about genetics, and that links into this, because when we're talking about annuals, if you got the wrong genetics and you're trying to plant that thing here, forget it. Most of the annual crops were actually bred for use in temperate climates, not in tropical spaces. Now, some of them, like peppers and tomatoes, for instance, they originated in tropical climates. Corn, too, for instance. Now, corn is a great crop here, but it likes our weather. Now, the origin of the tomato was obviously in a condition that was very different from Puna, because they're hard. They're not impossible, but they are hard here. But running down it, you can do cabbages, broccoli, cauliflower. We have locally adapted cauliflower varieties. I found that most of the open pollinated mainland type cabbages work good here. Copenhagen market, Danish ballhead, they're good here. Tend to work better when they're planted during the cool season, but yeah, beans, if you're using the right type. Now, in Puna, at least, raising hard beans like kidneys and stuff, we have so much rain, and you end up, it's so hard to cure things that really probably isn't worth your effort, although I can visualize a way it could be done. Yeah, so it's possible. Too much trouble for me. They give me gas anyway. So I ain't too worried about it. I kind of stay in my diet within the confines pretty much of what raises here. And that is not necessarily the same as what you're eating in Minnesota. Well, peppers are fairly good. There are a number of good varieties, especially from South America, and a few that originated apparently, or at least were around here in the islands for years. The Hawaiian chili is very strong here, lives for years. Hawaiian cocktail pepper, and it was brought from somewhere at one point, but it's, again, pretty well adapted, makes really nice sweet peppers here. It resists nematodes, it resists Chinese fruit flies, which these are two big things that wipe out your pepper crop. Things like bell peppers, though, any pepper that has an indented stem end, boy, it's in trouble. The fruit flies get on there, and they like to get in that little crevice and just lay eggs and lay eggs. And next thing you open your bell pepper, it's full of maggots or it's rotten. So some things are adapted, some aren't. I don't bother with bell peppers here. Now, I guess if you were in a screened hoop house, so you could keep those flies out, I guess you could do it pretty well. Probably could. But I grow them in the field, I like ají dulce. It's a good choice here. As for the tomatoes, disease is the problem. I guess just about everything else besides birds is okay. The birds will also ravage your tomato crop here in Puna. But the diseases, and there's a number of them. I believe the main ones are probably anthracnose, is what it looks like. I've never had it in a petri dish or cultured it, but it looks like anthracnose is what puts them down. But there's other diseases too. I mean, tomatoes and potatoes are both susceptible to pretty close to about 250 different diseases. If it's dry, you can get powdery mildew on a lot of tomato varieties here too. If it's wet, you don't get that. You get the black rot. Now, timing and variety on tomatoes is important. I took the Florida Everglades cherry tomato, which is a wild thing, I think, of a different species in Lycopersicum, and I planted it side by side with a series of other tomatoes that were more common, that were larger, like some golf ball sized tomatoes and such, in the hope that I was going to create hybrids by cross-pollinating. Unfortunately, all of the non-Florida Everglades variety perished literally almost overnight when we got really rainy and wet here. And I went back out in the garden. I looked at my new row of tomatoes, and it was black. They were gone to the stump that fast. But I tried again later, and so within the last month, September, I planted more again. I tried it again. The first planting was back around March or April, which failed miserably. Right now I have a planting out there that everything looks happy and healthy, and they are flowering, and I may just be able to get some of the larger varieties up to the size that I can cross-pollinate and create a nice hybrid that might be very disease resistant. Well, anyway, on and on with that. Most of the stuff that you grow in the mainland, in that vegetable garden, can be grown, but in many cases only with special conditions and requirements, or with special varieties. Squash. Pickle worm here. It eats squash. It devours squash. Yet the what's known as kabocha pumpkin here on the island, I think it's actually Calabaza of the Caribbean. I call it Godzilla squash. I don't know what it is. There's several different varietals of it here you'll see at the farmer's market. They all resist well. Yeah, pickleworm never gets into the main stem on that one. It can eat tender young leaves. That doesn't hurt things much. It can get after little fruit and flowers, which will limit the yield, but does not stop the plant. So it could be grown without extra protection and get some sort of crop. I usually figure I get about 30% of what the vine is capable of without doing anything. Cucumbers, of course, I have numerous videos on that. It's a pickleworm again. And, well, they're really a problem. And so I use parthenocarpic cucumbers under cover. Now, you could grow other cucumbers here if you wanted to spray, but I don't like to do that. So I do not. I've found that I do fairly well with watermelon without protection. Not sure why exactly, because they can eat it. I know that. They have hit me before. Sugar baby watermelon got devoured. First year I started growing watermelon here. Lately I've used Mini Love. That's the name of it, Mini Love. I get pretty good fruit. It's good quality watermelon too. Why the pickleworms haven't devoured them, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it's my timing. So maybe there's a window in time somewhere to do this, I'm still learning myself about some of this because a lot of it's pretty tricky. It really is. But I have heard enough, I think, about garlic and about potatoes. Now, the garlic obviously is in the allium family, and that's all the onions and leeks and chives and scallions and such, And yes, chives grow excellent here. They're not susceptible to the day lengths. Leeks, that's a relatively new crop here for me. I tried it this year. Very impressive. Wonderful leeks. Great leeks. It's a good place to grow leeks. I had no problems with them at all. As far as onions are concerned, as long as you're using the short day onion types and you plant them mostly from fall to maybe midwinter, right in there. That'll get them in the right period of sunlight. It'll get them into the right temperature range and so on. And they do pretty well. Occasionally I get a flood out. There are times when I get so much rain the onion bulbs will rot in the ground without finishing. But crop failures due to conditional weather, I'm not considering. I kind of try to find a drier spot to plant my onions if I can. But if you're using short day onions, you'll do fine. It's entirely possible here. People who claim failure of onions in Puna are probably using standard long day seed, which is what they use in the mainland mostly. Although if you're in Texas, Florida, Southern California, you're using short day onions too. The Granix hybrids are common as a Texas sweeter. The Vidalia is a Granix onion. The Maui is a Granix onion. Gabriella is a good short day. So is Pumba. Right now I've got Magdalena out there, which is a short day. I've had it before. It's okay. The main reason I'm doing it is because the others were not available. COVID has messed up a lot of the seed production lately. Yeah, but that brings me to garlic. I wish, I love garlic. I lived in California for 25 years. That's a garlic capital in Gilroy, We always grew garlic. We had it in the store nursery garden. I had it in my personal garden, and we did well. I grew it in Wisconsin, too. It was a little more challenging there, but it still got good garlic. But here, well, to begin with, garlic does need a certain amount of cold weather to grow properly. It's called vernalization. Well, I bump into a lot of people that think, oh, well, if I provide the cold weather, we're set. No. That's not all of the picture. It's also connected to photoperiods, the day lengths. Here on the 20th latitude, we're Tropic of Cancer. We got the wrong day lengths. We don't have enough down and enough up in the length of the days here. We're kind of like this instead of like that, and garlic doesn't put up with that. It will grow. You can put it in and you will get nice greens, and they will taste like garlic, and it will probably get as far as making a small single bulb at the bottom, kind of like an enlarged scallion. But at the point in time where the plant is supposed to start cloving, it turns around as the day lengths change. It can't do it because the day lengths are wrong. And I've never seen a single clove form on a bulb of garlic in Puna in 6 or 7 different plantings with about 4 or 5 different varieties. It's just a failure. I'm sorry. If you can figure it out, I have people insisting, no, we can do this. Well, dedication and persistence will take you a long way, but sometimes you're always going to hit a wall. As reality faces you. But if someone can find a strain of garlic that's raised down south, far down south, I'm talking like Thailand, or something on that order, Vietnam. If there are races of garlic that they have there that I find unavailable to me that work, I sure would like to get my hands on them because I love garlic. And the other near impossibility is potatoes. Now, there are places in the Hawaiian Islands where potatoes are raised. We have most of the conditions to raise them suitable, but the moisture and the rainfall here fosters dozens of different potato diseases. And in Puna, I can usually only get the plants up about 4 to 6 inches before everything turns black, just like my tomato crop. Now, I've only tried it about 4 times or so before I completely threw in the towel because I had exactly the same reactions. So, if you can figure it out. Now, I know in upland Maui, on the drier sides, that they do raise potatoes. I believe there's some potatoes raised also on Oahu. This island probably has some locations. I'd pick a place kind of upland, probably over 2,000 feet, where it's a little cooler, up to around 4,000 or 5,000 feet, probably very conducive, on the dry side, where you're getting probably 60 inches of precipitation and less. There'd probably be a better irrigated crop here, frankly. Like Kahala gets 16 inches of rain. I doubt potatoes go down to disease there, although they would go down to drought. They'd need to be watered. So, well, I'm going to pull from annuals there. And now let's move over to things that are perennial. In general, the most important ones to most of us are the fruit trees and the berries. The bushes that fruit and the trees that fruit is where we go. Well, now, this is a tropical environment. Again, I keep repeating it. In the mainland, almost everything you use is temperate. It is temperate climate. As you head further south towards the Gulf of Mexico and into Florida, and you head down to very south Texas, very south Arizona, and Southern California, well, here you have an environment where, well, at the very edge, like Florida Keys, Homestead, Florida, there are tropicals. They're at risk periodically, but there are tropicals. You get a little north of that, and you find citrus, which is a subtropical type plant. Most of the avocados are too. And so you'll find, say, across California, for instance, at least as far north as the Bay Area, you're going to find citrus and some avocados, and so they cross over. Fremont was marvelous where I used to live because we could raise subtropicals and temperates. Now, I had to use low chill temperates and hardy subtropicals, but yeah, we crossed over. We could have lemons next to Fuji apples. Amazing, right? With understories of blueberries, blackberries growing over here, and avocados over there. And I even successfully did a few varieties of bananas, which I do not consider bananas to be subtropicals. They just happen to be a tropical plant that in some cases has the ability to work in a temperate space. Here, I've had questions like one person had asked me before, and I've had others ask me about the pawpaw. The pawpaw is really picking up in popularity in the mainland there. I had some excellent excellent pawpaw trees in the Bay Area of California. It's a favorite plant of mine. I've been working with it since I was about 21 years old. That's 50 years. But I had to give it up. I brought the seeds here with me, and I planted the trees, and for 2 years in the nursery, they grew like crazy, made better pawpaw trees than I've ever seen anywhere, and then started to go in decline because they did not get enough winter chilling. And today, I have no pawpaws on the farm, and that's because they just plain wasted away and died after a while due to the lack of winter, lack of chilling. Hawaii's got multiple different climate zones. You know, we got ice and snow and maybe permafrost all the way down to tropical conditions, and somewhere in between there's a temperate latitude where the pawpaw, the apple, and the pear would probably grow. Unfortunately, nobody lives in those rather elevations, and there is almost no property for sale in those elevations either. You know, Parker Ranch gets up that high. They don't sell land. National Park goes up there, you know, but that's not for sale either. Very few places where you can get too much over 4,000 feet here and still buy a piece of property. Now, I'm sure there's a few pieces here and there that I don't know anything about that are above that, but, you know, Hawaiian real estate is kind of expensive. It ain't getting any cheaper. And if my dream was raising pawpaws, man, I go to southwestern Michigan where they will grow nicely along with some wine grapes and peaches and stuff. And the land is cheap. You also have, Chicago, Gary, Indiana, and various places where you have markets close at hand where you can market what you grow. I wouldn't bother. Stay in the Midwest, man. Seriously, if that's what you want to do. I have 3 apple trees here. They're stupid. They're about as bright as the guy that planted them. Yeah. No, they are the lowest chill varieties of apples that I can find. There are really none lower than things like Dorset Golden, Anna, Einshimmer. You know, they're way down there, around 200 hours or so of chilling they require. Well, we don't get 200 hours of chilling here. Here we get 0. Okay, nothing. There is no chilling. I mean, chilling there's 2 different scales. I think one's based on 41 degrees, one's based on 42 degrees, so it depends on which scale you're looking at. It does get confusing, but, most of the lowest chill temperate fruits that we know of really do sit somewhere around 200 hours. You know, those are the lowest ones. Every once in a while, I've gotten an apple off my trees. The trees get confused and sometimes just go ahead and fruit. I've seen multiple flowerings during a year because they're lost. Right now, I have branches of Einshimmer that are producing flowers. It's October. Yeah, I got flowers. Apples that form here over the winter usually are small and weird. It's the ones that come in the right season from spring on, but trees don't always know when spring is. There are a few peaches that people seem to have relative success with here. I think Floripride, I believe, is one of them that they're using. It's a low chill peach. I haven't messed with it myself, so I have no personal experience, but I've seen the fruit hanging on a neighbor's tree and on another friend's tree too. How long they go about doing that before the trees die is another question. My apple trees are gradually working their way towards the grave, I think, because they just never know when to fruit, what time of year it is, or anything. They're lost. Blueberries are like the same, but blueberries are much better at producing crops here than apples are. If you use the low chill types from down near Florida and the Gulf of Mexico, they work out all right. I do have a special video on growing blueberries in Hawaii that one of the friends of mine who was actually in charge of a blueberry project in Mexico, a commercial one, filled me in with some information about trying to force the plants, because really we're forcing them here. But it can be done. On the other hand, though, birds. Whew, birds. I hardly ever get a berry. I see berries, but they're gone as fast as I see them. I've tried numerous different types of netting, numerous different types of repellent things, sparkly junk and whatnot, bird scare tape, and they laugh at it. It's worthless. Here, to grow the blueberry, I would probably have to do the same thing I did in California. In California, I had hoop house. It was screened, so birds and bugs couldn't go in there. And I would grow blueberries, particularly the dwarf types like Misty and Sunshine. I'd grow them in tubs of azalea soil, and they'd come to flower out in the yard, and then the flowers would set to green fruit. And when I had green fruit and pretty much no flowers, I would pick the tubs up and move them inside my greenhouse, because at that time the tomatoes were out, the peppers were out, they're gone. I had space. So I just moved them in, I'd line them up on the benches, I'd lock the screen door, and I'd thumb my nose at the birds, and I would get 100% of the fruit by ripening it in the house. Same here. If you want to do this here and bother to get anything, I highly recommend that you create an enclosure that a bird cannot sneak under, fly through, etc., etc. But you got all these other temperate crops we grow, like pears, like plums, like cherries. Oh, I love cherries. Cherries were at risk in the Bay Area of California. Yeah, average chilling in Fremont was supposed to be about 425 hours. Well, cherry trees pretty much start at about 700 hours and go over 1,000. That's why we raise them in Washington and Oregon. There are some in California. Low chill varieties again. And yes, I would get fair crops on Stella, but the trees would act abnormally because of the lack of chilling. Even there. Here, forget it. Yeah, it's not even worth thinking about it. Plums, pretty much the same problem. We do have the ume, or mume. That's the Japanese kind of a apricot plum thing. It's kind of in between. Those will grow here. It's what they make lihi moi from. If you're familiar with hanging out here, lihi moi will dust the rim of a margarita with that stuff. It's made from those umes. Pears, I don't know. I haven't experimented with Asian pears. I'm quite familiar with the idea that they are lower chill than most of the European-style pears with the neck that we use. Maybe. I haven't tried it. I don't think it's probably about as bad as apples, frankly, as far as that goes. I think probably about enough said on the temperate crops here. Just simply, most of them are really out of place here. Yeah. Learning to eat new foods when you move to Hawaii is probably the best idea. There's reasons why we grow taro, why we grow breadfruit, why we grow cassava, why we do all these tropical crops here. Why? Because it's a tropical island. And so tropical crops tend to thrive pretty well here. So when it comes to, fruit trees, well, hey, papayas, yeah, probably done right up to at least 2,000 feet, almost anywhere in the island. Papayas. The papaya and the banana are two of the only crops I raise here where I actually get fruit almost any day, all the way around the calendar. Now, the jabuticaba does fruit around the calendar, but it does it in waves. It's here, it's there, it's here, it's there. The bananas are just, well, if it's ripe, it's ready, and so they just kind of keep producing. So for me, bananas and papayas are the only two tropical fruits that almost have endless production. Some varieties of dragon fruit, the yellow ones, have 2 cycles a year, so it's abundant. Lemons and limes have 2 cycles a year, and so they're quite abundant. The abiu actually has more than a single fruiting cycle in a year too, and so you can get several pickings off of a tree during a year. These are nice things, they really are, when you find a tropical plant that will produce more than a single wave of fruit within a season. But that's why we raise these things here, because they're adapted to the local climate. But even within the tropicals, okay, just to try to stress this whole thing about trying to bring temperate crops to Hawaii, even within the tropicals, I'm at 1,600 feet. There are a lot of tropicals that raise really good down between the shore and 500-foot elevation. It's much warmer down there on any given day. And so cacao, for instance, I can raise it up here, but down near the shore, they can get cacao to come on in, say, 5 years or so, roughly. Up here, 10 years. It's too long. You can't do it commercially, at least up at this elevation, but it does grow. For home garden, it's feasible. But there are a whole bunch of different crops that actually will thrive lower in elevation, but do not thrive up here. Jackfruits are better down low. Ulu, the breadfruit, better down low, not up here. We're kind of borderline right here at 1,600. I can sort of do some of these things if I want to wait longer than further down, but if you go a little bit above me, you probably won't be able to raise them hardly at all. They won't survive well. So even the tropicals have graduations in what they will do here on this island because of our elevations. I have one of the latest white pineapple crops on the island because very few people are growing white pineapples to any scale much higher than 1,600 feet. And so they sell out down near the shore, in July. But yet this year, because of cool conditions, we'll be waiting into November, I think, for a lot of pineapples to finish off. They've been coming on, in little batches. It's been a little bit erratic this year, but it spread the season out, which made the picking much harder for us. I'm not all that happy about it, frankly, but that's the way it goes. Yeah, so even the tropical crops on this island will react differently at the shore than they do at higher elevations. And there are total limitations as far as how far up a mountain that thing's going to actually work, or how far down too, in some cases. Well, I'll start repeating myself. I think I can't think of much else to say on it at the moment. I think give you the idea of where I'm coming from, because I do get questions and comments about this a lot. And, I'm glad to answer your questions, but in some cases I have to shake my head and go, why are you moving to Hawaii? Hawaii's a tropical island. If you're looking to grow temperate crops, buy a piece of land in Wisconsin or something, really, it's true. You'll be happier. You won't like it here. You won't be able to raise apples. All right, hang loose.